What does it mean to grow up in Uganda, East Africa, a country where most people know about Idi Amin only? They don't know any good thing. They don't know even there's a monk in Uganda. So I would like to share my experience. I grew up in a family, you can maybe correspond it to a middle-class American. Especially my father was coming from middle class. My mother, less than middle class, but my father was really well placed in Uganda. He was a director of a company, building and construction company, which was owned by my uncle. So I was brought up in a well-privileged family, I can say. And my mother was very loving. My mother had 3 children, and they actually I have 2 sisters. One died, there's one remaining, and is a half sister. So for me, since I was the firstborn, my mother poured all her love to me. And though there was a lot of things in Uganda happening, and what stood out for me is the political climate at that time as I was growing up. There was a president called Idi Amin, who has just assumed the office, at least when I started to understand about politics.
What age?
That time I was 5 years, and I remember my mother asking me to sit down and ask me a very serious question. She said, if people come around and ask you, who do you like most? The former president, Obote, or Idi Amin? I say, Obote. But for me, I could not make a distinction between the two. I didn't know even what it means to be a president. So my mother told me, never say Obote. They will take you. People will take you and they will kidnap you or so like that. She told me I should say Idi Amin. Then I asked, who's Idi Amin? And then just around the same time, some army people came to place around our town, and they were on a mission of looking for people who are really not obeying Idi Amin's orders. One of them was like Idi Amin had forbidden people to put on miniskirts, females, and they were looking for people who were putting miniskirts. Another thing, Idi Amin, for some reason, he didn't want people to put slippers in towns. And then he came to that town, commanded his army to find people who were wearing slippers and ask them to start eating them. That's what I remember as a kid. So I didn't feel so much of what dictatorship is because I was very young, at 5 years old, but at least I knew about Idi Amin from that time. And then I got to know that Idi Amin actually was responsible for the death of one of our relatives. And I heard that he gave orders, and they took him and they killed him, and they hid the body in the forest, and they had difficulties to find the body. Anyway, finally they found the body, and then they said that Idi Amin was responsible for that death. So for me, I grew up with that kind of image that Idi Amin is a very brutal person. But on the other side, my mother really tried to show me a lot of love, and that helped me up to now to find out what is it really mean to be brought up in Uganda with such a war-torn area. One thing, as my mother was bringing up, she was not actually forcing me to into different beliefs. She wanted me to stand on my own understanding. I remember one time giving me advice that if you have nothing to do, sleep. If you have nothing to talk to say, keep quiet. So for me, that's wonderful. That was wonderful, and she loved going to take a nap during the time. So she used to say, "Okay, come, don't go out and pray with other people, other kids. So just come and sleep," because that's what she was doing. For me, I couldn't sleep. All the time I stayed awake, and I just experienced that space and silence because there was nobody to talk to. Actually, that molded me slowly by slowly to appreciate silence. And in my adulthood, when I left my mother, I went to the boarding schools and all that. I used to lock myself inside the room, and I never talked with any other student. For many hours, people used to ask me, why were you locking yourself inside your room? But actually, I love to be by myself, alone and alone. That's what I loved to do when I was growing up. Okay, it was a Christian setting. My father was a very devoted Christian, and he used to go to church every Sunday. There's no single Sunday which I didn't see my father going to church. What was the Catholic Christian denomination, which is very interesting because in Africa, Christianity also is mixed up with our African traditions. And when it comes to marriage, African people, they don't follow so much the Christian rules. In fact, many members of my family, including my mother, had many wives, actually. Many wives. So that's called polygamy, and it's very, very common in Africa. And for me, I just saw the difficulties that polygamy produces, like jealous and envy. It was not actually a good system as I was growing up, because I got to experience this in our family itself, where my father had many wives. But one side, my mother, since loved me so much, always guided me how to live a life that is very quiet and silence, by taking those moments to be alone. So when I used to go to school, Sunday school, this was part of the kids program who were not going to church. First we had the Sunday school, so they used to make us sing, clap and all that. I enjoyed those songs and that was getting into the group. But then when I came back home, and my mother would say, oh, if you have nothing to do, just sleep. If you have nothing to say, keep quiet. So I used to have those quiet moments. So I was blending the silence with the songs that I was singing at the Sunday school during church service. So then I continued growing up. I passed the age of Sunday school. I had to attend church. So I used to go to church. I'm telling you, I missed the Sunday school because there was a lot of songs and joy and all that. And this church, there was kneeling down. I really did like to kneel down. The kneeling down, then the rosary. The rosary, actually, there was a lot of repetition, and later on I got over that, and it was repeating the same thing. Hail Mary, full of grace, may the Lord be with you. Actually, we continue on repeating that, but after a while, actually, there was that sense of calmness that I really liked very much. So actually, I enjoyed that portion of the rosary, repeating those phrases. It was a kind of concentration practice. So I continued doing that, and later on, I started getting into the boarding school. When I left my family in the boarding school, you have to really go far away from your family, and we are allowed to be visited. Maybe it was, I think, once a month. So they could visit us three times in a term. But since the school was far away, very far away, my mother and father didn't really actually visit me regularly. So I got isolated from my family. So that for me was a lesson of renunciation and detachment from my family, because the boarding school was far away from my family. And it was the best boarding school, one of the best schools in Uganda, called St. Henry's College Top. That's when I went to high school. My interest in Buddhism started when actually I arrived in India. Before going to India, I was in high school, and I didn't have a degree, of course, but I was told that India is a place where you can start a business. And my uncle, actually, I had already a business, a building and construction company, and my father was the director of that company. So they were expecting me to be an accountant. And even my father remembered, he said that, I wish you become a chief accountant. So I had a job prospect anyway to work with the family company, you know. So I went to India to study Bachelor of Business Studies. Actually, it's called Bachelor of Commerce. And I was very lucky, actually. I got a scholarship through the Minister of Foreign Affairs. So it was an exchange program between India and Uganda. And India was paying for my studies. So that was kind of cool because I got to be paid for my studies in India. So then off I went, and the university, in Punjab University in Chandigarh. I didn't actually know about that university. I wanted to go to Delhi University. I remember picturing myself how I'm going to arrive in New Delhi. In fact, before even I left Uganda, my fellow Ugandans, they say, you are going to India? You are going to die. Floods are there. There's a lot of poverty. There is a lot of... India don't have a space where to stay. They are sleeping on each other. So I had these funny images of India and earthquake, and I told them, the air ticket is here, and they're telling me don't go. So but I went. I gathered enough courage, and I arrived in New Delhi, of course, and New Delhi, and I was shocked when I went to India, actually. First Bombay, when I arrived in Bombay, the flight was cancelled almost 2 days, actually. And Indian came and touched my hair. They said, oh, Africa is too hot, because my hair was curling like this. Africa is too hot. I said, no. This was the first time somebody invaded my hair. They were so surprised to see hair curling like. And I said, in fact, they were just coming from behind. All of a sudden, I look back, like, why are these people touching my hair? Nobody in Uganda touched my hair. Anyway, I arrived at the university of Punjab. You know, it took me almost 8 hours, actually, from New Delhi. So, and I reached there. The room had nothing. There was nothing in the room at the university. So I had to buy everything from scratch, all my beddings and all that. Then I felt so lonely. I wanted to go back to Africa, actually, because the food was so hot. Actually, I spent almost 1 week. I could not eat hot food. So anyway, I got some friends and from Thailand. They were monks, and I decided to walk with them and move around. And then my fellow Africans said, why are you walking with those people? What are you talking with those monks? But for me, these monks, like Venerable Sandusit, there was a monk called Venerable Sandusit, was from Thailand. He had such a big smile that really showed me that there's something inside this guy. I mean, I didn't know that even he was a monk. I just saw these orange robes and very big smile. So I really started going around with them, and they took me to their temple. And that was for me good, because I got good friends abroad. That time I really actually wanted to go home, because of the culture shock, and the Indians, their face that time, they were a little bit uptight. I was so much used to the smiling faces in Uganda, but this guy was so very uptight. In fact, one time my friend asked me, can you tell the difference between a European and an Indian? Because I could not tell the difference when I was in Uganda. So if you see somebody who doesn't smile, is an Indian. But for me, actually, I wanted to leave and go back to my country, because I could not eat the food. It was too hot. But anyway, because of those friends, those monk friends, they were shining from inside, and it was that expression outside them, and it showed me what's really inside them. They were very peaceful and happy. They took me to the temple. That's how I was introduced to Buddhism in 1990, the first time I went to the temple. In 1990, that was my first time to go to a temple. It was just in the outskirts in Chandigarh. this temple is called ven.BUDDHARAKKHITA. And when I went there, I saw a big statue. I was really surprised. This was my first Buddha statue to see. And of course, we gave food to monks and they ate, and they had to eat first, and for us we ate last. And then I was questioning, why do they eat first and we let people eat last? So, but they explained me that monks, they don't eat after noon hour. I said, monks don't eat after noon hour? Don't they feel hungry at night? I started really investigating into the life of a monk. I said, it's too hard. It's very hard not eating after noon. Anyway, we continued our friendship with monks, and they used to give me fruits and food and even the clothes, warm clothes from Thailand. I said, these must be special people. They're so generous. In fact, those people, for me, they really illustrated what we call gratitude and generosity, because I can see they were very generous. And for me, that's the lesson I learned as a Buddhist monk now, to be very generous. Imagine, they're the one who are giving me things, and I'm a lay person. I was supposed to be the one who giving them things. You know, traditionally that's what we should do. Lay people should support monks for their material needs, and they should support us with their spiritual needs. So for me, I was touched by their generosity. And then one time they had to leave because they are studying at the university, public administration, master's degree, and there was summer holidays, so they had to go to Thailand. So they left me with their bicycles. I said, wow, that's amazing. I can now go around on a bike around. So then, but they created a kind of vacuum, because when they left, I felt very hollow and lonely, because there was no relative in India. But at the end of the year, we had foreign students day, where we had all foreign students like Tibetans and other people of Sri Lanka and other African countries. So I saw the Tibetans, and I got to know that they are coming, they are refugees in India, and they have their leader who's called the Dalai Lama. I didn't know the Dalai Lama before even I went to India, but I got to know that there's a person called His Holiness the Dalai Lama. Then they told me he's a monk. Then when they left, these Thai monks, they left for Thailand, I went for northern India. I went to see the Dalai Lama. So there I was in the hills in Himalayas. It's 8 hours drive. Then I had to take another bus, 12 hours. So it's like overnight, really, the whole night traveling to see the Dalai Lama in Makroganj. When I reached there, and it was full of foreigners, all Westerners. I said, wow, what are they doing here in such a hilly place? And then I saw the Tibetans, and then I arranged to see the Dalai Lama in public audience, and it was amazing. When I went and shook hands with him, he talked to me, and it took a long time shaking hand and talking, and gave me a kata, a blessing. And these people, the Westerners, asked me after that incident, what were you talking with the Dalai Lama? The Dalai Lama always shake hand like this, and all people are just going, shaking and go. But for you, you kept on shaking. And I was the only one, of course.
So what did he say?
He was asking me where I come from, and like that kind of thing. And with this kind of deep compassion, for me, I was just staring at him and smiling at him. We all smiled to each other. So it was really a very wonderful moment for me, actually. So that was a wonderful experience for me, to be in touch with the Dalai Lama, and that really rekindled my aspiration to keep on my path of seeking what's really true happiness. Right. After this retreat in 1994, there was something that happened that is very even difficult to describe, because 12 days in silence, doing and studying new things that I really didn't know before, I decided to think, oh, this is something that I really need to study. It's very profound. I decided to keep on the momentum of the retreat, trying to meditate on my own whenever I got time. And about the same time, I met a friend who knew a wonderful teacher. He's called ven.BUDDHARAKKHITA in Dalhousie. So I visited her. I asked her some of the burning questions that I had that time that have never been answered there, like on back of my mind since I was in Africa. Like, where do we go after death? Why are we here? Actually, what I was very interested, why are we here in this life, which is that time there was a lot of suffering also there. So why are we here? And then I asked her, where are we going? She really appreciated this question, and she decided even to record these questions. So she answered these questions. Actually, she's from this background of Krishnamurti. He was a wonderful spiritual teacher. So she really answered this question, and then I learned yoga over there. And
what did she say?
She said, we are here, the purpose of here is to live from humanity to divinity. That's why we're here, to live our life from humanity to divinity. In other words, we should start to explore our life and self-education, to live in quiet places and meditate and self-inquiry. All those things were encouraged by ven.BUDDHARAKKHITA. She really valued the silence, and I attended many lectures by her. And after that experience with the contact of ven.BUDDHARAKKHITA, I decided to go back down, and then I met one person. He was actually in Brahma Kumari's, which is called Brahma Kumari's meditation. It is a Hindu kind of meditation, samatha meditation. Somebody described it, and I thought that would be very interesting to continue my meditation. So from the university, where I was staying, university hostel, I used to ride my bicycle and go to this place to sit and meditate. And it was very dark inside, and it had a red light. They asked us to focus on the red light. There was a commentary behind it. You are a soul, indestructible. I said, wow, I'm indestructible. Whatever happens, I felt a little bit safer when I had that commentary, that you are a soul, you are indestructible, you go to Brahma world. So I sat there quietly listening to this commentary, but it was dark inside the room apart from the light you can see, which was red. And after that, I rode my bicycle. I felt very, very happy just slowing down during that meditation. I said, wow, I think I should really try to meditate continuously with this group called Brahma Kumaris. And I started actually to look for where I can continue this practice. I got their brochures. They say they're all over. In America, they have spiritual universities. Then students used to ask me, what are you doing? Where do you go in the evening? I say, I'm a student of life. So I started to call myself a student of life. I'm taking a bachelor's degree in life. So life became then a university for me to investigate. And then I decided to go to teachers like in the south, there is one teacher called Sai Baba, and the Hindu teachers. And then there's some other Hindu teachers I went to meet, but Sai Baba stood out because I heard that he can make all these miracles, and I heard about miracles in Africa, and people who do miracles in Africa, they're very, very important. So I went to see him also. And even before that, actually, I decided to go to Baha'i temple in New Delhi, and I really asked them, please, I want to be a Baha'i. They said, okay, we'll convert you to Baha'i. So I became officially a Baha'i person, follower. I became a follower of Baha'i. So I began to what I would call spiritual seeking. I started searching something. That something wasn't clear. I just went on, keep on searching something from different traditions, Baha'i, Hindu, Tibetan, and this and that, and the Christian actually. Before even I used to go to a temple, to a church, and the service was in Hindi, and I didn't understand the Hindi. What is very interesting, I had this in my mind because when I was growing up in Africa, they told me, if you go to church, God will see you. So when I went in India in the church that time, I said, I shouldn't leave my Christian background. I should go maybe to church. So I went to the church one time, sat there, and I didn't understand a single word, but I said, okay, God has seen me. He has a big eye. But later on, I said, he's really, really seeing me, actually. I started questioning those things. So when I went to the church, I really felt there was something missing, actually. I liked more meditation, because meditation for me was quietening the mind and calming down. So I liked that very much.
So how did you end up with Buddhism then as a preference?
Preference after really studying more books on Buddhism, become a member of Tibetan house and read many books on Buddhism. I found out it was answering most of these questions that really, really have been buried inside me, like where, like what happens after death, and about Nibbana, the enlightenment. Talk about heaven. When I was growing up in Africa, they told me, when you're good, you're going to go to heaven. When I went to Buddhism, they said, hey, you don't only go to heaven, you go to the really highest place, highest state, which is called final enlightenment, which is far beyond heaven. I said, wow, I should go for Buddhism because it goes beyond heaven.